Hi, I'm Erika Osmundson with agcareers.com, and I want to take a few minutes today to talk about the agricultural workforce as it relates to COVID-19. Here at Ag Careers, we're obviously kind of in an interesting and unique position as we work with both the employers and the job seeker community. One of the things that we've been doing through this pandemic is some survey research just to understand things a little bit better. We've done 3 surveys so far over a course of about 6 weeks, both from our employer perspective and our employee perspective. Today I'm going to really focus in on the employer side just because of the audience that I'm here talking with. One of the things that we started our surveys with was kind of the preparedness of the industry as it relates to their workforce in this COVID-19 pandemic. Both stakeholder groups felt like our industry and their employers were well prepared, and we saw that grow over the first 2 surveys even. So that was a positive. Then we moved on to continuity planning. We asked the employers what they were going to do if they were stricken or some of their employees were stricken with COVID-19. Throughout the 3 surveys, it's kind of shifted around 3 main themes. The first being asking well employees to do more, which is interesting, or rotating departments. Some of that was in there as well. But the third, and I find surprising, is that 23% said that they don't plan to do anything. They'll just go without. So I think that's an interesting statistic that we're going to want to watch as this pandemic prolongs. The next thing that we really focused in on, particularly in the last 2 surveys, is what employers in the agriculture industry were having to do in terms of workforce management. On a very bright and positive note, 78% of the employers participating said that they haven't had to make any changes when it comes to their workforce. So I think that's really positive and something that our industry should be highlighting. Obviously, agriculture is essential. We're essential to the food supply. So I think that we need to focus on that a little bit, but also not be complacent, knowing that not all of us will be immune to what happens during this pandemic. So on that side, on the flip side, we did see that 20% of the employers participating did say they had to do something. Which was up from our last survey 2 weeks ago, just slightly, an additional 5%. Things like reallocating staff to different departments were mentioned. We also saw 20% say furloughs and reduction in staff at less than a 5% increment, so that wasn't too bad. I think we will see this shift even further as we continue to survey. We did focus in a little bit more on this last survey around what and how those decisions are being made. Right now, it looks as if companies are kind of acting in the present. They're planning and making those decisions based on the business needs currently. But that was closely followed by looking at the business needs in the recovery mode. So I think that's a good thing and a good place to look at. The departments that were hit the hardest were the sales and customer service, followed by executives in the operation fields. Another bright note, I think, is that we asked, because we don't know the duration of this pandemic, how long employers can kind of sustain with this philosophy on making decisions about their workforce management. 60% of the respondents said that they don't anticipate having to make these types of choices, regardless of the timeline. And so I think that's another really good, positive, bright spot. For those that are going to have to make decisions, the next kind of phase or time frame was in that 2-month window. So hopefully we can get the economy back up and going before we hit that 2-month window and have to make some of those tough decisions. Another thing that we're getting asked a lot about is internships and internship programs. We're right in the height of moving into the summer where many of the companies are expecting students to come in. And unfortunately, this could be an audience segment that really does feel some negative influence, but perhaps not. Hopefully we'll have those that can continue on. So with that said, we did look at who was moving on for those employers that did have internship programs planned. 32% are moving forward with their plans just as they were. 17% are still evaluating what they're doing, which is very interesting because in our survey, last survey, which was just 2 weeks ago, that number was 45%. So employers are making some decisions and getting their game plans put together. 13% are discontinuing their programs completely, which is up from the last survey, which was only at 5%. And then we've got things like delaying start dates, having our interns work remotely, decreasing the number of interns, or reducing their hours were other strategies. As we look at kind of the re-entry to the workforce, we did ask about that just in this last survey, and we'll continue to survey on this. 52% of the employers that were surveyed haven't started plans yet. Again, I think that will be a place that we see some pretty drastic changes over the next few weeks. On the employee candidate side, I do want to touch on one thing just because it is such a big issue. We really targeted in this last survey around mental health and how COVID-19 is impacting mental health. I would say that mental health was a big issue prior to the pandemic. And so we wanted to kind of see what was happening with the added stress of the pandemic. 34% said there hasn't been any change. And again, these are job seekers, so they haven't had any changes in their mental health kind of status. 59% though said that they had a negative impact, and it was on a sliding scale of 1 to 10. And so some are more extreme than others, but definitely we are seeing that influence of COVID-19 in our employees. 51% of the companies are providing some type of resource according to the employee audience, Some interesting things and some neat and unique things that I picked out from their feedback, the job seekers' feedback, was they're doing non-work related check-ins. We've heard about happy hours, virtual game nights, virtual lunches. So any of those types of things that you can do with your employees during this time would be positive. We saw subscriptions to mental health apps being provided by employers, and then also flexible work schedules. So lots of good things that can be done kind of on that mental health perspective. Obviously for us, we were very curious about kind of recruitment trends during this pandemic. And so we focused in on that on several of the surveys. And we've seen the trend slide a little bit. I definitely think that there was kind of that panic that happened right at the beginning. And now we're hitting that plateau and figuring things out. And those companies that can really focus in on the long game are probably the ones that are going to be the most successful. And so we're seeing some of that recruitment kind of quick dip come back up. Again, being in the agriculture industry, we didn't see a huge impact, just kind of compared to other industry sectors. So it's not been a negative story really at any point. When we looked at the recruitment specifically and what employers are doing, 26% in this last survey said that their plan is the same. They're continuing forward. We had another 26% though that did say that they would be halting and not recruiting completely. And then we had another 26% that are limiting it, which is up slightly from kind of last time's survey, which was at 12%. So with that said, I think that, again, overall, we've got some bright spots in the industry that we work in. Time will tell, and we'll continue to survey and continue to provide trend information as it relates to recruitment. One thing that I think I've noticed as we talk to the general public, we've always had a labor shortage in the agriculture industry when it comes to some of our on-farm stuff. And so this isn't necessarily new to us. We might be feeling it a little bit more right now. But I think one of the positive things that we can take away from this situation is that people are a little bit more informed, hopefully, about their food supply and where it comes from. And if farmers, producers, agribusinesses are open to it, we have an opportunity to bring in some new people during this tough time where we have a need and there is a supply of potential job seekers that maybe were laid off from other industries and other businesses. And so I'd like to see more of us take that opportunity to bring in kind of and look for the soft skills, the hard work, the accountability, the communication, and we can train the technical side of things. And it may end up meaning a more robust workforce for us down the road. So we'll continue to survey. Information will continue to be on agcareers.com. We do have some COVID pages if you'd like to keep up with the survey information or would like more details on what I've shared. But until we see you again out in the industry, be well.